Hello everyone, my name is Mark and I'll be your main speaker today at the first live webinar from UXtweak. Our team today will be A/B testing and prototypes. I'm joined here by my colleague Peter, who is our senior researcher, and we'll make sure that I won't tell you anything that won't be true.
Or rather help answer any questions that you may have.
So, also we are joined by our colleague Patrick, who is taking care of all the technical stuff and will pay attention to your questions in the chat, which will be answered at the end. And there may be a possibility of winning a t-shirt if your question is good enough. So, before we delve into the technical stuff, a little bit about us. As I have already mentioned, my name is Marek, and I am a UX researcher at UXtweak. I mainly focus on expert consulting for our enterprise clients and on the end-to-end solution we provide for them.
Yeah, and I'm Peter. I'm also a UX researcher at UXtweak. I've done UX research both in a lab, also with online tools, although lately I've been mostly focusing on case studies.
Okay. Now let's get into the presentation. A bit about UXtweak as a company. We offer a all-in-one UX research tool which provides you with all the necessary study types you will need in your research, from the basic ones such as card sorting and tree testing all the way to the most complex ones such as prototype testing we will talk about today, or website testing. We also are ready to help you with any recruiting needs you might have. This QR code is nothing fancy, it's just our landing page, so feel free to visit us and learn more about our product. What we will hopefully learn today is why and when conduct A/B prototype tests, how to know your prototype is ready for these tests, how to select your KPI and why to select it, how to use UXtweak for prototype testing, how to choose correct number of respondents for your study, because this might prove tricky sometimes, how to work with the study results you have gathered, and lastly, a few best practices to take away from this webinar. Before we go to the prototype specifics, a few words on the A/B testing in general, just a quick refresher, because I believe most of you know what we are talking about. A/B testing, as is in the name, it's A/B testing, two variants, not complex. You can as well test on multiple variants, but typically it's just two designs or copies or whatever you need to test. It's about direct comparison of these variants. You choose your KPI, your measurable attribute, which you then research, and the variant which performs better in the given KPI is the one which is better for you to use. A simple example of these bees, you can look at them, one is cuter, one is angry. If you choose the different attributes, one will win one time, the other one will win second time. And the last important thing about general A/B testing is the random assignment of the variance to your respondents. This takes care of the possible unforeseen circumstances which could lead to diluting your data. And since we already know what A/B test is, it is a good thing to think about when you can use an A/B test. It's a comparison, so nothing too complicated. You can use it whenever you want in any of these steps of your design process. It could be as simple as comparing a simple wireframes against each other, or maybe later in your design process it could be a complex prototype such as these. The few typical use cases for the A/B testing is, for example, a rework of something you have already developed, such as a logo, or maybe if you have an e-shop which doesn't perform as well as you would expect, you redesign your cart and see if the conversions go up, or maybe they fall even lower, which is also an important information for you. Also, the other typical scenario you could use your A/B testing for is during your design process. When you arrive at a big decision point, you implement your both variants, pit them against each other in an A/B test, and simply implement the one which performed better. But before we get to the test itself, we must make sure our prototype is ready for test. Prototypes in general are about flows, and also about flows. Because if you have just a bunch of wireframes which have no connection between each other, it's a waste to do a prototype test, because prototype tests are rather complicated and also more often than not are more expensive. If you have just a bunch of wireframes, try a simpler test, for example, first click test, 5-second test, or preference test. As I have already mentioned, the connection is important, but realism is what you really should be focused on. And when I'm talking about realism, I don't aim at fidelity. Fidelity is not the important thing. The important part of the realism is having a wide prototype with multiple flows, which allow your respondents to get lost. Because if you do a prototype testing with just one flow, it's not really a test at all. When we aim at the A/B testing with prototypes specifically, it is important that we have at least two variants, as I have mentioned already, which differ in a significant way. But what it means significant could differ from case to case. If you have a small company which is just developing their first application, significant change should be something like a change in navigation scheme or something complex like this. But if you are a big company such as Amazon, moving a button 5 pixels to left could be a significant change for you as well. We have prepared a few examples of differences we deem significant in any case. For example, as I have already mentioned, the navigation scheme change. You can go from the navigation bar to the side menu, for example, or a significant design style change. This could be a dark mode to light mode, a change in color palette you have on your website, or something more simple like changing of a font. Also, another type of a change you could see is information display logic. Some respondents would prefer their information in a list, other in tiles, and that's what this test will tell you. Finally, the last example we thought of was amount of information provided. When you communicate with your respondent, you choose how much information you provide. Your end goal is to ease their navigation through your platform, and sometimes less information is better than more, because too much information can lead to confusion as well. This was, I know, it could be a little long when you talk about theory, but now it's the fun time, the example study. Just imagine you have a simple design tool and you have everything already designed, and the last step was choosing place for your help contact form. It doesn't matter how well you design your user interface, it is natural that your respondents will get lost sometimes, and it's important for them to be able to contact you when these cases happen. I have chosen the placement in the main navigation bar. As you can see here, the help option, I know, creative, but I think it will work nicely because it concentrates all the navigation options at one place. But my colleague, it wasn't Peter, don't be angry at him, it was somebody completely else, suggested adding a call to action bar to the right bottom, which I thought wasn't as good of an idea because it places the navigation element at the completely different spot. But they argued that usually chatbots and support bots are located at this place, at this part of the website, so it would be intuitive. And since I am not one to argue and shout, I just offered, okay, let's make an A/B test and see who is right. But before we get to the A/B test, what do we need for it? As I have mentioned, the KPI is one of the most important parts of the test. Also, we have to define a task or tasks. It depends on the depth you want to go into. Yeah, the prototype itself, that's kind of obvious, but let's not forget about it. And finally, the respondents, or our decision makers, as we can call them as well. What about KPI? Which to choose? Well, that's up to you. It's case by case decision you have to do. We chose success rate because we simply wanted to know if they were able to reach the support or not. And the secondary KPI we chose was lostness, because if the difference in the success rate would be close, we would be able to decide by lostness, which tells us how lost, obviously, have our respondents been during the completion of the tasks. Now that we have our KPI decided, it's time to define our task. Yes, it looks like a bunch of words which will be boring to read, and once you arrive at the end you already forgot what you have read at the beginning. But now I will try to convince you that there is not even a single word which had no reason to be there. For that, let's go through the points which would define a good task text. So what is it? What is a good task text? It's a text which clearly states the task. That's kind of obvious. Just tell them what they are supposed to do. But that's just half of the work. If they know what they are supposed to do, they also need to know when they have completed it. Describe the scenario and describe to them how the interface will look like when they are done with the task. What is the final thing they are supposed to do before they know they have completed the task. Also, help them believe they are in a actual application, that it's not just a prototype and not just a test. Help them jump into the make-believe world with few sentences of a introductory flavor text. And finally, your task text as a whole has to be neutral. There should be no clues, no hints, no click on this, click on that. If you create a task text with clues like this, you are not testing your user interface, you are testing the reading capabilities of your respondents. So, the first point I have mentioned, clearly state the task text. The task. Contact the support. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. It's short and clearly states what they are supposed to do. Describe the end goal. Provide them with your name, email, address, and the reason for recontact. That's what they are supposed to do. But we have also added all text fields are automatically filled after you click on them. This is simply because some respondents may be interacting with a Figma prototype for the first time, and they may get confused why they are not able to use their keyboard to fill out the text fields. And lastly, once you fill in all the information, don't forget to send the form. This is just a simple clue for them to know what is the exact endpoint of the scenario, so they are not confused by it either. The introductory flavor text, you have been using the Easy Designer. That's just a name we have come up with. Platform for some time. This month you were not able to find the invoice for your subscription. This is not actually important for the task, it's just to introduce them into the scenario. And lastly, as you have noticed, there was nothing about the call to action button, nothing about the navigation menu. That's entirely up to them to find out. Once we have our task defined, we can also add some additional questions. You have already managed to recruit respondents which are part of your target audience, so it is a good idea to gather as much useful information as you are able. The pre-study questionnaire is usually aimed at the information about respondents themselves. You use this information to filter your results at the end. Maybe you have a subgroup of your target audience which is the most important for you. You can filter out the results for this subgroup using this information. And you can also add questions after tasks, as we did. We simply ask them to subjectively rate how complicated this task was for them. And this is then used for a double check when you are analyzing your results, so you got their own opinion on how difficult the task was. Likert scales are usually the best way to ask these questions. Since we have gone through our setup of the task, we can go and see how the prototype looks in Figma. We have recorded a video which shows us the prototype we have prepared. Firstly, the variant A. You can see that all the options in navigation menu are clickable. They take you to a realistically looking website parts. And here we have our help option. After you click it, you go through the support contact form, send it, and that's all we need from our respondent to do. The variant B is same in all the additional content such as blog or prices or eShop, but as we can see, the help option is missing because we have our call to action button, which takes us to the contact form, which is the same as before. And now to see the prototype in Figma in detail, we can see both our flows designed here. The bottom one is the one with the help option in navigation bar, and the top one is the call to action button. We can see the help option right there, and the call to action button at the bottom right here. Now we will zoom out a bit to see the both flows copied. This is because we had to make sure our respondents won't jump from one flow to the other one during the course of the study. As you can see, there is no connection between the flows whatsoever. All connections are limited to the flow itself. When you are done with your prototype, you simply go to the share link. You have to make sure it is set up to be available to anyone with the link. You copy it, go to UXtweak and start preparing your prototype testing study, which will we show you right now. This is what you will see after you have loaded your designs. These are your designs loaded inside UXtweak. You can select one of the two prototype modes we have available. The one-to-one Figma, which we have selected, is more focused on the advanced animations and transitions offered by Figma. This is a mode which uses the Figma itself to project the prototype into our study. The other option is the simplified editable mode, which allows you to edit your hotspots and designs in UXtweak without the need of going back to Figma. The hotspot editor looks like this. The hotspots themselves are links in your prototype. They are a specific area you chose in your prototype which takes the respondent into next design. For example, you can see them here in the menu or in the sign up button. If I click here at the blog option, I will be taken to the blog design. That's what the hotspots are. Now back to the setup. After we have our designs prepared, we create our tasks. The task text is identical with the one we have already mentioned. Once you have that inside, You choose the task type. We chose simple match, which just selects the starting design, which is the landing page, and the ending design, which is the model that is shown to respondents once they are done with their task, with the sending of the contact form itself. We would have chosen the full path match if we were interested in either multiple paths or the specifics of their journey through our designs, but we are not currently interested in that. Then you can also add the post-task question here, which we have done with the 5-point Likert scale. Also, you just add the second task for the version B, where you just select the other landing page as your start point and the other model as your end point. Everything else is the same. Then you randomize your task order and limit the number of tasks shown to respondent 1. This assures the fact that each respondent will be randomly assigned one of the variants and they won't see the other variant at all. We will now show you how the preview of this study looks like, which is the view which will be offered to your respondent. They are welcomed by a simple welcome message which can be edited at your as much as you desire. We have left it in the standard version. Then they are presented with the pre-study questions which they are required to answer. Afterwards, they are presented with simple instructions which tell them how the prototype testing works. And then they see the task text. After they are sure they have read it fully and understand what they are supposed to do, they click Start here. It will take a few seconds for Figma to load our prototype. Once it's loaded, the prototype will be fully functional, all the menu items will be clickable, and the respondent will be able to go through our task. They can, as I mentioned, they can click any of the navigation options, and what we want them to do is, as we have received the version B, the call to action button is present here. We want them to click it, fill the contact form, and send it. This is the moment when we want them to click the done button because it's the final design they are supposed to visit during their task. After they are done with the task, they rate it on how complicated it was, and they are done with the study. This is all that needs to happen. Now we will go back to the presentation. Okay, so you have your study fully prepared. You are confident that all your tasks are well defined, that all your messages are prepared, all your questions, everything is as you want it to be. It's time to find your respondents. This is usually a rather tricky task. Since our platform is designed for the English-speaking audience, we chose USA to be our country we will recruit from, since it's the largest English-speaking market. And the trickier part is choosing the correct number of respondents. You can start with the UX classic of 5 respondents, which is supposed to show you most of the biggest mistakes in your design. But you can go small step further and follow the common industry format for usability testing, which claims that 8 respondents per group is the minimum you need. Other sources claim that 10 to 12 is at least what you need. But we have decided to follow Nielsen's citation, which tells us that 25 respondents per group is the amount which will highly likely provide us with a statistically significant result. This would give us 50 respondents in total. This number is also important because it combats the problem of entropy during the random assignment of variance. Yeah, entropy is a complicated word. Basically, the more respondents you have, the bigger chance is that they will be equally divided between variants. That's why we went for the 50 respondents as well. And lastly, according to the Faulkner's usability problem found percentage, which has been published in 2003, The 50 respondents should provide us with at least 98% of the mistakes found, which is the level we are confident to bring to webinar like this. So you have your respondents, you have your study, everything went just fine, and you have your results ready. Before we delve into them, just a quick refresher. We have two variants, the variant A, which is the navigation bar option, and the variant B, which is the call to action option. Now, these are the success rate results. I have omitted the labels on purpose because now there will be 5 or 10 seconds for you to try and guess which of the variants have worked better. My variant A or the colleague's variant B. And still, it wasn't Peter, I promise. Okay, that's enough of time, I believe. Yeah, variant A won. I have one. You might be led to believe that a 10% difference is not as significant, but just imagine that 10% of people who struggle with your website were not able to reach it. That's a lot. Also, if there are any doubts which variant was better, here are some other KPIs which would be possible to compare, and as you can see, the variant B performed better only in the perfect completes. All the other KPIs were better for the variant A. Now we will go back to UXtweak to see the results themselves. As you can see, we have 50 completes. 72% success rate means that regardless of the variant, 72% of the respondents were able to successfully complete the task, which means that both variants were rather usable. We can look into a specific respondent and their journey through our prototypes here by simply clicking on their task result. As we can see, they have been dealt the variant A because it's the hello/1. They chose to go to prices first, which is a bit of a puzzle for me because why would you go to prices when you want to go to support? But they have managed to recover back to the landing page and found the help right away, filled out the contact form and sent it, so they are a successful complete. There are many other results we could go through, but since the time has gone a bit, I will just show you my favorite part, and this is the paths, which show you the specific paths your respondents took throughout your prototype. As you can see, the variant A or the version A, 8 people got the perfect complete, 4 people got the near perfect complete, somehow going through e-commerce, which is a bit puzzling, and only 2 people got actually lost in the prototype, with 1 managing to find the way at the end. Now we'll return to the presentation. The takeaways. I know you are sad because we are nearing the end, but don't worry, it will be fun. First of all, variants should differ in one distinct attribute, because if you provide multiple differences in the variants, you won't be able to pinpoint the one which caused the difference itself. At the very least, 8 participants per group. I know budgets are tight, been there, done that, but please, at least 8 per group. Ideally 25, but that's utopia, I know. Use all the information available, but have clear priority. You have paid for your respondents, gather as much information as you could have, use it, but remember what is your main KPI. It was success rate for us, lostness was the second one, but if conversion is your main KPI, it doesn't matter other variant was better in lostness, because conversion is what's interesting for you. Assigning variants to participants at random. As I have mentioned already, try and limit the unseen circumstances which could meddle with your data. Assigning the variants at random will help you with this. Believable prototype. Allow your respondents to get lost in your prototype. One flow prototypes aren't testable. You just give them a prototype with one flow, they will click all around until something proves to be clickable, and they will solve your task even if your UI is completely not understandable. Use complete flows. As we did, use complete flows, allow them to click the help button, fill out the contact form and send it. Skipping any of these steps would lose you information which could be gathered. The task text. I know we have talked about it rather a lot, but it is important. In short, it has to be informative but neutral. These are the two most important attributes your task text should always have. Additional questions. Remember the questions we have added at the beginning, the gender and the age question. I have filtered the results by the age for the 26 to 35 age group, which we believe is usually the age of the graphic designers and the UX designers, which could be using a platform like this. And as you can see, the variant A performed better as in this group as well, with even bigger margin between the variants. Here are the best practices all together, so you can screenshot it, take it away, use it. And lastly, here's a cute sloth because you managed to survive our first webinar, and the bit.ly link below can be used to download the presentation we have just shown you. Now we'll take 2 minutes or so and we'll go to your questions.
So the first question we've received is, can UXtweak platform track text inputs to fields? Standardly, if you're using prototyping tools such as Figma, these do not actually allow the users to input text into fields, so then you would probably make it work in such a way like Marek showed, that once an element is clicked, just enter the text automatically. But depending on what kind of tool you're using, you might also want to do A/B testing with, for example, the website testing tool. Then you could also set up your studies in such a way, for example, to test different versions of a website, and then you could also record the text which has been input into fields. So that would be one option. In case you'd like to know what kind of text people are entering into fields, you could also use our session recording tool, which also allows you to see what kind of text is being input into the field by your own actual users once you've added the UXtweak snippet on your website. Yeah, I suppose that's it. It's of course always necessary in the case of using the session recording tool to take attention that you're not actually recording any input fields where it's there's a risk of the users inputting some personal data, but you can fully personalize it in your studies. Yeah, do we have any more questions? Can you also A/B test just copy text? Yes, of course. Copy text is one of the most easiest types of content that you can actually copy test, and very easily too. What you could use would be, for example, let's see, just a 5-second test. You would show a screenshot, for example, which includes the text that you're trying to get feedback on, and then you would ask your participants some questions about the text, for example, how trustworthy you find it, and stuff like that. It all, of course, depends on what kind of copy you want to test.
Also, if you want them to see the text all the time, you can use the first click test. You won't need the first click itself, but it will show them the text all for the whole duration of the task, and the cognitive strain will be lower for this.
Yeah. Then you could, for example, include some questions regarding the copy which has been included. For example, just to evaluate the entire complexity and comprehensibility of the text overall.
Or even the tone of the text itself.
Yeah, of course. So the third question, how can I add prototype which made from other platforms like Adobe XD, Azure? So this depends from tool to tool. So for example, with Azure, you could use our website testing tool, which you can find a guide on our website for how this works. Azure is a prototype tool which allows you to export your prototypes as HTML, so it basically generates a quasi website where you can insert our recording snippet for the website testing, so you would see the whole session as it happened. With the Adobe XD, you could test your prototype on mobile devices with our mobile testing tool. We also have a plugin planned in the very near future this year, Q4 if I remember correctly, which will also allow you to test this on desktop as well.
And also the prototype testing tool itself allows you to test the InVision prototypes as well as the Figma prototypes. So those are the platforms we currently support.
Okay, so those were all the questions for today. Thank you very much for listening.
And some of you may be looking forward to receiving our t-shirt in the near future. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.